So the Zephyrus G14 was one of the best laptops of 2020 and 2021, and actually it was one of my personal favorites. It was perfect for people that wanted something that was very portable, but also something that could game really well. And honestly, I really don't think it was that expensive for its specs. But now I have this brand new 2022 version that adds a few more improvements to the bunch, including a bigger display, including a webcam, and including a mux switch. Now this is also an all AMD laptop, and the top spec version that I have right here comes with a Ryzen 9 6900HS processor and a Radeon 6800S graphics card. So let's check it out and see if this G14 is still the best compact gaming laptop to get. Let's begin. This video is brought to you by Gigabyte and their M32U gaming monitor. The M32U features a fast IPS panel with a 4K resolution and 144Hz refresh rate. It has a ton of important gaming features, including FreeSync Premium Pro, as well as G-Sync compatibility, and it just offers everything you need for a high-end gaming experience. Plus, compared to the other 32-inch high refresh rate 4K gaming monitors on the market, the M32U offers the best value of them all. Check it out using the links in the description below. Now, at first glance, it looks very similar to previous G14s. It is very well built, and it just feels great to hold it and to touch it. The coating has a good grip, and what I really appreciate, it is not sensitive to fingerprints at all. If you're coming from a budget gaming laptop, this will be a huge step up. Now, when it comes to portability, it is nice and compact, even for a 14-inch laptop, and it weighs only 1.7 kilos, making it a great choice for anyone that is constantly on the go. Now, I personally love this Moonlight White version, but there is a more typical Eclipse Gray one available as well, and as before, you can actually choose between the version that comes with the NVMe Matrix display that I have right here and a cheaper version without the LED effects. Now, the NVMe Matrix has been upgraded too. It has actually more LEDs than before, and they are smaller, and also the software has been updated, so it offers more effects in general. But as I've said before, the Matrix version does look cool, but it also costs more. So if you have a good use case for it, for some sort of promotions, for example, or for streamers and gamers to kind of show off their logos, it can be really cool. But for the rest of us, I would personally just save the money and go for the non-Matrix version. It is very easy to open it up with one hand, and when you do so, the chassis lifts up a bit, and that gives the laptop more room to breathe, and it puts the keyboard under a bit of an angle, which is very nice for typing. Now, speaking of the keyboard, it has a really nice tactile feel to it, and it is very easy to get used to it. There's no real flex while typing, but it does flex a bit if you really press down on it on purpose. The keyboard has a single zone RGB lighting, and you do get dedicated volume buttons and buttons to open the software, but it doesn't come with a numpad, which also kind of makes sense because there is simply no space for it. The touchpad is larger and smoother this time around. It has a good wrist rejection as well, and it will do its job very well, but I simply prefer using a mouse, and I find it really hard to get excited over any touchpad, to be honest. They also decided to finally add a webcam here, which I think is a much needed upgrade for a laptop like this one that kind of mixes gaming with work. It is only a 720p model with so-so image quality, but it will be more than good enough for school or for those work meetings. Hi, so this is the test of the camera and of the microphone of the ROG G14, the 2022 version. Connections are a bit of a tough subject on a small laptop like this one, but I still think they found a pretty good balance here. Now, on the left side, there is a power connector, HDMI 2.0B connection, USB Type-C port with DisplayPort support, and that is connected to the iGPU, and you get a combined audio jack. Now, that Type-C port also offers power delivery up to 100 watts, so you can charge it nicely with a compact USB charger when you're on the go, and just leave that big brick at home. Now, on the right side, there are two 10 gigabit Type A ports, a 10 gigabit Type C port with DisplayPort support that is connected to the dedicated GPU, and you get a micro SD card reader as well. Now, just like on most AMD laptops, you are missing a Thunderbolt connection, but that is not really a big deal unless you plan to use an external GPU. And I would say it would have been nice to have a Type A port on the left side for your mouse, because I don't really like plugging too many things on the right. But still, for a small laptop like this one, I think that the connections are actually pretty reasonable. But let's move on to performance. Now, this laptop comes with an AMD Ryzen 9 6900HS processor, which is very rare. Not many laptops are using these new AMD chips. And they also offer support for DDR5 memory, and this particular model comes with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 4800. Now, the new CPU is a nice upgrade over the previous high-end AMD chips, with improvements in both single and multi-threaded performance. But that being said, Intel's high-end 12th gen processors are still faster. Now, I would say it performs close to the Aorus 15P with an i7-12700H that has a very similar power draw, which is around 70 watts. But laptops with higher power limits really give Intel a lead. Intel is about 15 to 20% faster in single-threaded performance as well. Which doesn't make it a bad processor. This is an excellent 8-core 16-thread processor, and while it's not the very fastest in the list, it is still more than fast enough, and it can easily do things like video editing or really use any other heavy application that you can think of. But let's see what it does in games. Now, the model that I have right here comes with a Radeon 6800S GPU, but there are also models with a 6700S that should be roughly 10% slower than the one that I have right here. And all models now do come with a mux switch. If you're serious about playing every AAA title, I do think that the 6800S is the one to go for. This laptop does have that high resolution 1600p display, which does demand a bit more from your GPU. Now, the 6800S is perfectly capable of running most games on this resolution. Lighter titles like Doom Eternal and CSGO easily make the most out of that 120Hz display, and most AAA games will run anywhere between 60 and 90 FPS at higher settings. But there are still a couple of games that really do push the limits. God of War, for example, runs at 57 FPS, Cyberpunk at 41, and Dying Light 2, which is an extremely heavy title, averages at 43 FPS. Now, this is a FreeSync display, so as long as you're over 48 FPS, you're going to be fine. But that does mean that you will have to use FSR for some of those games. Now, thankfully, FSR is supported in tons of games by now, and AMD is really making huge steps with it, even if it's still not quite at the DLSS level just yet. But honestly, on this panel, which is very sharp with a PPI of around 216, FSR on ultra quality simply looks great and makes all these heavy titles run smoothly. Now, ASUS is drawing attention to the panel as well, which they're calling the ROG Nebula display. And in many ways, it is an excellent display. It goes very bright, hitting around 480 nits, which is well above average. And that also makes this G14 one of the very rare laptops to use outdoors. At the same time, it dims really well, dropping to a white level of only 24 nits, making it great for a pitch dark room as well. Now, the color range is excellent, covering the entire sRGB spectrum and 97% of DCI-P3, plus it is calibrated really well, so you can do your color accurate work right out of the box. It is a pretty fast display as well. The total system latency is 12.7 milliseconds, which is on par with a high-end desktop combined with a fast gaming monitor, so it should be well suited for competitive games on the go. And the response time is reasonable, but it's not really 3 milliseconds as they advertised. I mean, it does hit 3 milliseconds in a couple of transitions, but others are significantly slower and they do show some overshoot as well. Now, do keep in mind that I'm testing this with the much stricter RGB10 correction and not the older 9010 method, so don't just compare my results to the results of other reviewers. Now, an average initial response time of 4.8 milliseconds and average gray to gray of 6.8 is still pretty good for a laptop, and I would say much better than most others, but I still wouldn't really rush to call it amazing. Now, a bigger issue that I found here was that the display has a pretty low contrast. 1000:1 is pretty typical for an IPS or an AHVA panel, but this one only hits 966:1 and it subjectively looks even lower. Now, many dark scenes have this grayish look to them, and that can feel a little bit disappointing, especially next to those colorful scenes that look really good. Another area that ASUS has focused on is the thermal performance. They added features like a liquid metal and a vapor chamber to increase that cooling potential. But as usual, there are always limitations when you have a small chassis like this one. Now, during CPU workloads, it behaves pretty well, even in the high performance turbo mode, where the CPU stays under 90 degrees with a noise level of 47.5 decibels, which is reasonable. But in games, it gets a bit harder. So in turbo mode, the CPU averages at 97 degrees and the GPU at 89 degrees. Now, this is within spec, but it is hot, and I personally do like seeing temperatures a bit further away from the theoretical limits. I would have preferred a slightly higher fan speed and slightly lower temps instead. Now, you could swap to the performance profile, which shows much better temps and it's barely audible at 41 decibels. But unlike on most Intel NVIDIA laptops from ASUS, where you lose about only a couple of percent of performance, here you're actually losing close to 20% if you switch to the performance profile, which is a huge drop in my opinion. So this profile only makes sense if you really need to keep quiet. That being said, in most light tasks, the fans will just turn off, making this laptop completely silent in things like office work or internet browsing. Now, while this laptop loses to the latest Intel laptops when it comes to the CPU performance, it more than makes up for it in battery life. It lasted 5 hours in the PCMark 8 productivity benchmark and 9 hours in my Netflix playback test, which is an excellent result for a 14-inch laptop with a 76 watt-hour battery. In the PCMark 10 video playback, which will replace my Netflix test soon, it even lasted 10 hours and 41 minutes. And in the modern office benchmark, 9 hours and 14 minutes. So this is very much so an all-day work kind of a laptop, and a very strong argument for getting this over the typical gaming laptops or even the more expensive Z13 Flow. Now, another argument would be upgradability and maintenance. So this G14 is very easy to open, and inside you can easily clean the fans, you can replace the battery, you can replace the standard size 2280 SSD, or replace the Wi-Fi chip that is hidden under it. One memory module is soldered, but the other can be replaced. It would have been nice to fit a second SSD, but this is already much better than most 14-inch laptops out there. The speakers have also received an upgrade from the previous models, and they're quite impressive in my opinion. There is a lot of volume and it doesn't have that anemic or that metallic sound that some laptops tend to have. So it is one of the nicest laptops of 2020, at least so far. Now you can get some even smaller work laptops, and you can get some more gaming-oriented laptops for the same money or even less, but I don't really think there is anything that combines those two without any real compromises. Now, it's still not super clean and there's not that much bass, but it's still better than most gaming laptops, and I would say it is very usable in my opinion. So overall, this new G14 is a laptop that gets a lot of stuff right while making a very bare minimum of mistakes. I wish the panel contrast was a bit higher, and I wish that they either tuned the fan profile of the turbo mode a bit more or made a profile that kind of sits between turbo and performance. But other than that, it is really excellent. It offers a ton of CPU performance, it offers a lot of gaming performance, and all that is packed up in this beautiful small chassis with a fantastic battery life and a very good display. And the price is supposed to be around $1,900 for this particular model, which again is not that bad considering its specs. So I would say it is a very, very reasonable purchase if you really want a compact laptop, because a larger one will make more sense if you just want to use it to game at home. So if you are looking for something that is small and that you're going to just drag around with you wherever you go, this is without a doubt the model to go for. And it is still definitely high up on the list of my favorite laptops so far. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and see you all in the next video. Bye guys!